This is Banks. I am joined, as always, by my buddy Shane. How's it going, Shane?
Good, man. Glad to be back in the studio. It's been a very just a time-sensitive couple of weeks for me, man. I've been just running across different continents and states and everything else within the past week. Was over in the UK again. Came back here for about 24 hours, went up to North Carolina, and then back here. Man, it's been crazy, but I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be recording again.
I missed you.
Yeah, I missed you too, man. We had a great Memorial Day weekend. How was yours?
Pretty low-key.
Yeah?
Hung out with some friends, played some soccer, played some tennis.
Yeah, you were telling me you're playing about 2 hours worth of barefoot soccer, and I
might have. There's a muscle that hurts a lot.
As you were mentioning that, I was just imagining myself trying to play 2 hours worth of soccer, and then you kept compounding it, and then I think you got to like the point where you're telling me that you were playing with 20-year-olds, and I was, oh god, I don't even know how you're up and walking, man.
It was fun. I need to exercise. Gives me like energy, and I'd been tired.
Yeah.
And there's two decisions you can make at that point. You're tired, you can either like sleep, and it actually makes you more tired, or you can do things, and it gives you more energy, which sounds counterintuitive. But for me at least, that's exactly how it works.
Yeah, it's all that brain chemistry going on. When that dopamine kicks in through exercise, you tend to be a little more alert and into things that are going on around you. And I don't know what it is when you sleep that your brain secretes, but yeah, you definitely continue to do that, you're going to continue to be tired and lazy. But hey, I think we got a great show for you guys today. You guys have finally responded. We've got a couple of reviews. I'm very, very thankful for that. We have another 5-star review from Eric Turner. It says, "Need more podcasts like this. It's a great podcast. We need more people like this speaking about liberty and freedom." So thank you very much, Eric. This is a couple of weeks old even, and I think it came in like right after the last time we recorded.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to think that we forgot about it or anything, but yeah, man, breaking that drought of reviews. I've got 78 reviews right now. I've got 90. This is our 92nd episode. And
so we're falling behind here. We want to keep up with the number of episodes, guys.
At least.
So go steal like your friend's phone, go into the iTunes or the podcast app and leave a review real fast.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Actually, no, I have not. I don't condone stealing people's phones, but you can ask them to do it. But thanks, Eric. Eric, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is a Ron Paul friend from back in the day.
Oh, cool.
Who I haven't seen in forever, but he spells his name like that with a K. So I'm thinking that might be him.
Might be. And then I've got C. Williamson 3. Another 5-star. It says, "Great show. Loved hearing from Brian Nichols on your show. I think it's a great way to share each other's following by broadcasting like-minded programs." Big heart emoji.
Very cool.
Yeah, it is. Thank you very much.
We also have a bunch of patrons since the last time, which is
That's
very
a great thing.
One of the patrons is Coleman, and that was Coleman's review a second ago you just read.
The C. Williamson?
Yes.
Okay.
And
do you know Coleman?
I do. He's also a Ron Paul friend from back in the day. I met up with him at the GOP convention. Hadn't seen him in a few years, I think.
Yeah.
But we talk every so often. And he didn't know I was doing a podcast. And I told him I was doing a podcast. After the second day of the convention, we were tired. And he became a patron. And I texted him. I was like, "Thank you so much. That's really nice." And he admitted that he hadn't listened to it yet. I was like, "You just became a patron without listening to the podcast?
Wow,
what is wrong with you?"
But, you guys, he must be. He must like you a lot, or think a lot of you.
I guess so.
Yeah, that's
we do.
That's really
we do
cool.
like he would trust me because, and I did have a lot to say at the convention.
I'll tell you what,
which we'll get into.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to that.
You shouldn't. It's all horrible stories.
I've got something to tell you, so go ahead.
Yeah, cool.
Who else you got over there?
We also have Sarah Ellis, who made us extremely happy when she told us that our podcast was the perfect amount of time for her commute. And so we don't have to question ourselves anymore.
She also weighed in on the veterans as well, and the recruiting or what the recruiter won't tell you podcast that we did.
She did.
Yeah, very very cool.
And
you got another one?
I have one more.
Wow.
So Coleman became a producer level. So now we have 3 producers.
Wow.
Lee, Coleman, and Quest. And Mary is also a producer level. And I wish I knew more what to say, but I don't know Mary. And so I am like extra humbled.
Yeah. Well,
That somebody who listens to the podcast, who I don't even know, who I hope to know one day, gives us so much credit and trust.
Well, thank you guys all for doing that. I mean, between the patronage and the reviews, that is absolutely what we've got to keep having to keep growing the show the way we're growing it now. And I'll tell you, it's fun when you're out and about and you run into people now and like, or just happenstance type things where they're like, oh, I love the show, I love what you're doing. I actually had my cousin a while back go, how did I not know that you had a podcast? And then he put down Tom Woods to listen to it, and I was like, man, that's a big thing there, and I won't give out his name, but yeah, I was really he's an older cousin and I've always looked up to him, so for him to be on this with us and listening to the show, like, that's a cool thing for me.
Having to make decisions between different podcasts, we put a poll up on Rebellion Pod on Twitter the other day about how many hours of podcasts you listen to in the end.
Yeah.
And there was 4 options. It was less than 2 hours, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, and more than 10 hours. And it wasn't even perfectly evenly split, but it's about like a quarter each.
Really?
From 29 to 20%. And some people who are listeners, like we know they listen often, listen to less than 2 hours, which means, we do more than 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
So they listen to only us, which is interesting. I don't know how I could pick, but I'm glad I have a lot of time commuting here to the studio. At work, I get to listen to the podcast a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'm just doing math and, I can do 2 things at the same time.
I've actually started picking up, just trying random podcasts out there.
What's the latest random podcast you have found?
Dangerous History. Mm-hmm. Really enjoyed it. There was I think it was in Canada when I got to this one, and it was a really cool show where one of the guys, I believe from the Cato Institute, and this guy that runs Dangerous History got together, and they did a podcast on the Battle of Shiloh, and they did it from 2 writings of 2 very young enlisted guys. I believe one guy was 16, the other one was 21. And so they wrote chapters about this battle, and it was they were not in the same room when they read it. They both recorded and then interweaved the storytelling about how the day before and the day after, or during the Battle of Shiloh, and then even after, how it all progressed. Man, I was captivated, Banks. It was a really cool thing, and to see, once you're part of the kind of this world of podcasting, to see how other people do theirs and trying to pick up the good things and leave the bad things and everything. Mm-hmm. That was it's always good to just sit there and see. You could never listen to any other podcast in the world, but you wouldn't be doing yourselves any favors. In my very humble opinion, I think it's a great thing to sit there and do things. And I'll tell you the Brian Nichols show that we were on just recently, that was a lot of fun, and getting a lot of great feedback from kind of taking different podcasts and introducing audiences. I think it's really neat.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently got onto It Could Happen Here, which is an offshoot of How Stuff Works, which is based out of Atlanta here, the iHeart Radio group or whatever. And it's about the possibility of a civil war erupting here in the States. It's done from a left-wing perspective, even though he says that he has libertarian/anarchist tendencies.
Yeah.
I haven't found them yet. He says it's supposed to be fair, like he's going to look at it from a right-wing and a left-wing perspective. I don't think he does that in the end. And the first few episodes just made me angry because he's gratuitous. But the content is really good. He has all this information.
Yeah.
But now that I've listened to, I think it's episode 8, and it comes out every Wednesday or something, I've enjoyed being able to put away the fact that I'm not a fan of his personality, but the kind of imaginative part of it is cool.
Yeah, the ability to not deal in extreme fact and everything else, where
he definitely leaves it. But here's what's weird: he has like some science-backed, history-backed facts that
Yeah.
I've learned. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting to hear. And he has everything pinpointed when he's talking about the right. Lots of facts, lots of little interesting tidbits.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's the left, he's just very flippant. He's like, yeah, I guess Antifa could do this, that, or the, and then he just goes back to, but the right wing are going to subjugate you under their oligarchy or their theocracy and kill all. It goes.
Yeah, no, and I can see that. What's funny is we had talked about this a little bit in the past, and I had found a guy on the other side of this where it was it proprietarian or something like that, where it's a government through contracts who was extremely even worse than all right, like seriously, like genocidal almost. Yeah, and. Whoa. Yeah, well, the thing is that when you have to listen, because people are relevant, especially people with voices that are out there that are talking about this kind of thing. This is not something that's going away. This is something I see out of more and more and more people who are very level-headed, just going, man, I don't know what goes on, or what will transpire, but I do believe there's some violence here in the near future.
I hope not, but what I don't understand, and maybe I just don't hang out around enough like intellectuals to be able to understand where the current is going. But from my perspective, and like from the family I grew up in and so forth, reading everything was a good thing. Like I read Mein Kampf, and I know like my parents both read it, and it seemed like a smart thing to do, not because the ideas are good, but because I don't know, somebody who had a lot of influence and ideas that are sadly listened to wrote it, and so you should read it. And so the fact that one would be criticized for looking into everything that's out there seems crazy to me.
Yeah, and it's funny.
I listen to Vox.
Yeah,
I think they're garbage journalism, but I listen to them almost every week.
Yeah, it's funny. I read Mein Kampf in the Marine Corps. It was one of the in our company there was a lot of guys who were very. I just very well read.
You said there was like a reading list. You were expected to read certain.
Yeah,
books.
Well, depending on who your team leader was, or platoon commander, or chief, a lot of times they would make they would have you read certain things. And I say make you. Yeah,
like if you don't do it,
voluntold, right? So, but it never was one of those things that I ever. Question after we started to do it. This exposure to different ideas that other people hold near and dear to them. I think that's a great idea. It's something you need a lot of exposure to, and obviously, in that specialty, you had to really try to understand who some of the greatest evil in the world was. Unfortunately, we didn't have any, manuals or how-to books or recordings of our own government to pass around to each other at that point, which I think, and probably this day and age, I imagine there's a lot more of that going on.
Just turn on C-SPAN like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Last time I was at YALCON, actually, or it was the first time I was at YALCON, but it was also the last time. I couldn't sleep one night, 3 a.m. ish. I turn on C-SPAN, or I turn on the TV. It happened to be C-SPAN. Mm-hmm. And the conversation was about more money for some particular project in Afghanistan. It had to do with building certain types of roads there or something like that. And I was just like, I bet nobody's watching this. And this is actually like, and it gets overwhelming because like, if this is interesting at 3 a.m., then it's probably interesting 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So must watch C-SPAN. We should do a podcast just on C-SPAN. And we've gotten kind of off track, but the Dangerous History podcast and It Could Happen Here, 2 podcasts that are pretty
interesting for sure. Yeah. Dangerous History is actually really cool.
It Could Happen Here is actually half cool.
Yeah.
It's only got 3.5 stars, so you can see what's happened there, but I have enjoyed listening to it.
Do you find yourself a better absorber of information through the written word or through spoken word?
Written. I like to read. I absorb it better reading it, which is why I don't listen to that many audiobooks, though I am about to finish Crushing It by Gary Vee.
Yeah, you sent that to me. I finished it. I can't wait to talk to you about it. It's a great book, by the way, and very informative. If you're out there and you need a good book, I would definitely recommend it. Well, if you're an entrepreneur and if you are looking to take a more what's the word I'm looking for?
Counterculture, a contrarian approach.
Yeah,
to...
yeah. If you're ready to blaze your own path and do what you want to do, I definitely think you should definitely read this book. It will probably change your life.
I think it has. Part of the book is stories of people who his previous book, which was Crush It, is stories of how it changed their life. Like they read the book and they were like,
"You ever have any other books like that?"
Self-help books?
Well, self-help or...
I guess it's not exactly self-help. It's, what would you call it?
I don't even know what you'd call it anymore. I mean...
It's a very practical book.
It is. It's almost a how-to book. I mean, it's filled with actual examples of people going out and doing this through application, which I find really interesting to hear, how these niche type skill sets out there going from being unrecognized into absolute superstars. So
since I don't like to separate the ideas, like religious ideas, political ideas, entrepreneurial ideas, they're all the same. They're just ideas, and the fact that we put them in boxes is actually problematic. I mean, I could call it a libertarian-ish book to some degree. But I read 4 weeks. The 4-hour week.
4-hour work week.
By Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
Who was kind of inspired by Gary Vee in some degree, but did his own thing too.
Yeah.
And that was quite interesting.
When did you read that?
Ooh, this is like 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because I thought I had talked to you. Maybe I talked to somebody else about reading that book. And that was really one of my first steps into understanding that I needed to do something more entrepreneurial, and that's when I started. And I'll tell you, Banks, like I've been throwing noodles at the wall for so damn long to see if anything will stick.
And then the rebellion came along.
And then the rebellion is here, and I couldn't be happier with that type of with the 4-hour work week. It was the first thing that got me outside my comfort zone.
Here's what's interesting. I think both those books redirect. If you've got the wrong paradigm, shift your paradigm and redirect in that kind of contrarian manner. I think the Principles of Liberty can do that only because we've gone so far away from them. There is a danger. Michael Malice has been promoting his book
a lot
on every single podcast you can think of. If you listen to other podcasts, you have heard Michael Malice talk about his new book called The New Right, I think.
Yeah.
And
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a concept he talks about where, because things are so inverted, like the truth is so inverted, what a lot of people are first introduced to is changing their ideas, and it's one idea. And then, sadly, some people take too many red pills. Like they don't take, like if you need 3 pills to get the truth, you take 3 pills. They take and they just question everything, and they get lost that way. And so you've got a generation of people
work on one idea at a time, kind of
who are just getting lost because they're just questioning everything. Like, oh, that was fake, so everything must be fake, and like birds aren't real, or
the moon landing's faked, and everything else, right? Like,
and so that's the only reason I pause and saying it's a paradigm shift book, like the 4-hour work week, Crushing It. Really saying things that the mainstream media is not saying. Like, you don't have to get a college degree. Maybe you don't have to graduate high school. Just kidding. But we have to be careful not to go down everything's wrong kind of path.
Yeah, it's
because some things are not wrong.
So sometimes it's hard. I mean, with as much information that's out there these days, the art of this is being able to discern. Discern. Okay, this smells a bit funny, and then you need to look it up. What's crazy is a lot of times, and what's made me a more knowledgeable person is going in and doing that discernment and doing a little bit of the homework on the backside of it. And what's crazy is when you find out that what you are being told is actually true. That's those type of like aha type moments where you're just kind of baffled all at the same time. It's a neat world.
I guess it pushes me back to what we talked about last episode about what we had gotten wrong.
Yeah.
And you said like you had gotten wrong the war
a
thing,
lot of
and I
things.
said like one of my big things was that I got wrong that, like trying to force people to do certain things. Like, hey, do it my way. This is how we get Ron Paul elected. You have to do it. You have to do it my way.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's like the right approach, and I kind of lost my train of thought there because I had a well thought. You want to get into the program that we have veered away from extremely?
It's all right. I think these were helpful things for our audience. I mean, a couple of paradigm changing books that we have both read that have propelled us to do things that we are extremely passionate about. I think that's a great intro. So, you went down to the Georgia GOP convention here.
Yes, this was my 8th GOP convention.
You were out? Are you just going for 10? What's your goal?
So, one of our listeners today, actually, or was it yesterday? She sent us something, and she was talking about how she just loves the podcast. And one of the things we've brought her is peace of mind, in that she doesn't have to attach herself to being so involved in the Republican Party as much as she is.
Yeah.
She cares about people and politics because it affects people, and that's why I'm assuming to some degree. So if I've misrepresented you, I apologize. But and that's why she was involved in politics, because she cares about principles and people, right?
Yeah.
And it can look like there's very few solutions, and so that's what you have to do, right? If you want to even, a lot of people say, if you even want to comment on politics, you better vote and you better be involved. If not, you're not allowed to talk. Yeah. And I think that's stupid. And so I think there's a place for everybody, and I have decided for myself that there is a value to being involved in politics and involved in Republican politics, because a lot of their policies or their ideas are good. Not all of them, but a lot are actually extremely good. And I've said it before, like there's a Republican creed out there, and I could stand behind that Republican creed all day. It is beautiful.
If the Republican Party actually practiced what it preached, they'd be in a lot better shape than they are now. That's for sure.
Absolutely, and that's one reason why so many people like Ron Paul, because there are people who care about the Republican Party and the principles, and that's one of the reasons why the Republican Party exists, which is an infuriating fact because it's a very small people at the top,
and because they had a chance twice to elect a guy who was pure Constitution,
and they would have more if it wasn't so controlled by people at the top. It's I want to point the finger at the people who are really the problem, and in Georgia there are people who are the problem. But it's one of the things I said. Yeah. Actually, this was every year. This happens more and more, but this year it happened to an extreme degree. Of even some of my friends pushing back and being like, "Why do you go there, Banks? Why haven't they kicked you out? Like they should not even accept you. Like there's no reason. Like why do you expect to be successful if all you do?" And I kind of went on what I called earlier a Facebook rampage, and I just posted tons of stuff while I was at the GOP convention. Like this is happening.
And you spoke as well.
That is happening. I spoke a few times.
Tell me about that, Banks. I mean, when you get down there, and to kind of set the stage for everybody, you know, we've talked about the Speaker of the House here in Georgia, who is in an embattled position right now. Obviously, it's extremely controversial. It has not left the headlines. And this GOP convention, there were resolutions that wanted to be brought to the floor by different Republican, chapters here in the state that had already passed resolutions for his removal.
Absolutely.
So if
you're a new listener, episode 65 and 85.
There you go.
And you understand what we're talking about. It's bad. Just know it's really he's a bad dude.
Scumbag.
Who's done extremely bad things.
Yeah. So you get down there and kind of just take me through it a little bit, because I was traveling. There's no way I could make it down there. Really love to get your take on.
Sure. So the convention process is 1 year. It's to re-elect people to represent the Republican Party at different stages. So the county level, district level, and state level. And 1 year it's to choose delegates who then go on to nominate a candidate. So it was Trump last year, and before that it was Romney. And the reason I got involved was because the Ron Paul campaign was like, you guys go become delegates, then you get to vote for Ron Paul. So woo! And I've been treated like my first foray, I was treated like crap.
Yeah.
I mean, all these.
Did you have long hair then too?
I had longer hair.
Yeah.
And I wore flip-flops.
Oh,
I got called a hippie a few times.
Peasants are among us.
But I got treated like crap, and all the niceties you would think conservatives are very polite and so forth went out the window. And then it got calm for a little bit, but it has definitely re-escalated. Maybe because I've been a little bit more vocal. But I got insulted a few times.
This time around, really? So what were some of the insults?
I wouldn't want to repeat them.
I mean, in a very PG-13 type of way. What?
Be quiet. Beep beep beep.
So they're yelling expletives at you
A few times
at this convention.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a mob mentality to it. So in the convention room, there's probably like 16,
with any crowd,
16 to 1,800 people.
Sure.
But anyways, to get back to the point, there's some resolutions that were passed at the county and the district levels. Five of those counties or those districts sent on resolutions saying Ralston needs to be removed. Different language, but basically that. And the resolutions are usually not something that are prioritized by the powers at be, but the grassroots usually care about them. As soon as an issue gets brought up there, you'll see people go to the microphones and want to talk about it. And there were hundreds of people wearing stickers that said "Remove Ralston."
They brought big signs.
People snuck in signs because the rules say you can't have signs. There is a very top-down approach to how things are done.
Yeah.
I've got a piece of paper here with the rules, and I mean,
is any of it yelling expletives at people for voicing their opinion? Can you do that?
It doesn't address it here. In certain circumstances, that would be frowned upon. But if they yell at me, nobody cares.
Nobody cares,
including me. I used to care more. It used to make me like getting up at the microphone. I used to like my heart would race.
But now you've had all this practice.
It's slightly.
Did
easier.
it help?
It does help. I still get sad when people. So I'm a sensitive person. It makes me extremely sad.
Be nice to Banks, guys. God
and
almighty.
I did talk to one person who cussed at me, and I went and asked him why he did, and they usually back down and they apologize, and that made me feel a little bit better. But it does make me sad.
Yeah.
I don't say that overtly because then people they think you're weak and whatever. But lots of rules, and the rules here. Any resolution properly submitted to the resolutions committee and not reported by the committee to the convention may be moved from the floor by a two-thirds vote without debate. That is the most lax rule in all these rules about the resolution. So 49 resolutions were submitted, not all in Ralston. Only 6 of them were actually brought to the floor. And
so 49 resolutions are submitted. You get 6 that come to the floor.
If you go to the website, it says you have to submit the resolutions by this date, and it gives you a P.O. box to send it to.
Oh,
Hold on. No. It gets worse. Since I have been involved, I have been annoyingly commenting that the fact you have to send them by P.O. box is stupid.
Yeah.
This time, though, in the call, which the executive board gets to decide when the dates are and so forth, those are the actual rules. And you can go and find that, but to find that is particularly hard. And so you just go on the website and you read the rules. This time they changed it and they said, on top of the usual rules, which is send it by this date to this address, you also have to send it electronically, which I would have loved to know because I would love to send it electronically. I've been complaining about that for 7 years. It has to be less than 250 words. It has to be in editable format. And if there's facts within the resolution, they have to be backed up by footnotes of sorts. So the resolutions committee has become something which was supposed to be a platform for grassroots promoting ideas, right? So I've passed the constitutional carry one in Cobb County and in the 13th district, or the 11th district. I've passed one for jury nullification. We passed one to remove Ralston. I passed one to say that the $5 hotel motel tax was bad. But at the state level, they've so controlled it that nothing went through. I went to the resolutions committee and sat down there, and the official rules is that you're allowed to lobby for your own resolutions. So there's a big table here. I'm the only non-resolutions committee member, and they asked me what I'm doing there. I'm like, well, we're allowed to lobby, and it's fine. They kind of have to accept the rules. and they ask me which resolutions I'm speaking on. And I say, well, I've been told that only 6 resolutions have been accepted. So which ones have been accepted? If not, I don't want to. Do you want to waste my time talking about the ones that, and then she says, the chairman who's in power says, well, tell me which ones you have and I'll tell you if they're on the list. And it's this back and forth to where it's a piece of paper.
We're wasting each other's time.
I've
now.
asked this to the piece of paper, they won't let me. And I make the comment, well, it would be really easy if you would show me the piece of paper and I could see what the reasons are. And
who's the chairwoman?
One of the her name is Linda Heron.
Okay.
She's older, has been in the party for a long time.
Sure.
Her acolyte, as I will call him, his name is Sean Davis. And boy, how to say something nice about him.
Why? I mean, you don't. If you don't have anything nice to say, you don't have to say anything at all, right?
I'm being facetious.
You know what I'm saying?
And all the other members didn't know what they were doing, so those two controlled the whole thing. But and I figured this out at this convention. One of the best excuses is mismanagement, because you don't even have to say it. It's just like, oh, look at how things are so poorly organized. We're sorry that this is affecting your, in my opinion, liberties and ability to operate in a reasonable fashion as a Republican activist. Mm-hmm. And so it's all mismanagement. The first committee was canceled at the last minute, and then it was rescheduled, but it was rescheduled for 10:30. They actually met at 10 a.m. I, of course, assumed they would do things like that, so I got there at 9 a.m. And that's what you have to do. The problem is when you start saying all these things. So I went point by point. I was like, I was here yesterday, an hour early. I'm here an hour and a half early. You start sounding like a crazy person that's being conspiratorial.
Yeah.
To the people who don't know what's happening. Yeah. Linda and Sean, they knew what was happening.
Sure.
And so then she interrupted my question, my statement, because I was allowed to make a statement. And I said, I'm going into a little bit too much detail, and I said, I'm going to get to it. She's like, well, which ones are you going to talk about? I'm like, I'm getting to it. I'm making a statement here. And in the end, I just made a statement about all the resolutions I wanted to pass. So I made a statement about constitutional carry and jury nullification and the anti-hate crime resolution. Yeah. and the Ralston one. And I saved Defend the Guard for the last. And we've talked about Defend the Guard a few times.
Sure.
We've had Pat McGeehan on. And I wish you had been there. First thing, because they would have been slightly intimidated by you, which would have been...
Next year, buddy.
Which would have been nice.
Next year.
Cool. And second thing, because as soon as it happened and I had this miracle of eloquence about it, and instead of being too analytical, I just said, this other resolution is really important to me. I've learned now that apparently some of the parameters were not met, because I didn't know there was an email I could send them to, because you guys do a horrible job at communicating, but it has to do with our National Guard and our troops and sending people to die for the most awful of reasons.
Yeah.
And they all stopped attacking me, and 3 of them apologized and said they still weren't going to do anything because they're mostly cowards.
Sure. But
they said they stood up and said, our troops are so important to me. Thank you so much for introducing this resolution. I was in this branch of the military, and it's also important to me. And I kind of gave up at that point, because at some point, if you just go on, you just make more enemies than necessary. And it did take me aback.
Yeah.
So that was weird. But so this is the lead up. And then there is the fight, the fights on the floor that happen. And every year, the Liberty crowd, which is usually about 40 or 45%, and this is a broad coalition. So you've got your religious right, you've got the few Ron Paul people who are left there, and your more conservatives or fiscal conservatives, and a few the Trump people are kind of split in two. Some of the Trump people are friends with the establishment, so they'd go that way, and some of the Trump people are there because they hate the establishment, and they can see that we're on the right side. And so a floor fight ensued, and we tried to make amendments that would let us introduce the resolution against Ralston.
Yeah.
That we weren't going to hear. We tried to make a fight to hear the resolutions earlier, because what usually happens is on Friday the politicians speak, on Saturday morning the politicians speak more, and then we do elections, and then time has gone by.
Yeah, it's over.
And then we lose a quorum, and everybody leaves, and none of the resolutions get talked about whatsoever.
Unbelievable.
We won one fight, which was that while we were doing elections, they would show the resolutions on the big screens.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a small fight, but we never win, so I guess that was good. But as usual, right after the elections, everybody started walking out, and we talked about the resolutions for a second until somebody was like, "Hey, do we have a quorum?" When you call for a quorum, you have to count automatically, and we lost the quorum, so nothing got discussed.
What a heavy-handed bunch of tyrants.
It happens almost every year, almost the exact way. The reason it was slightly different this year is because the Ralston resolution made the coalition of people who cared about it slightly bigger than usual. And even with that being known, if the party had been the same party as it was 4 years ago, we might have had a chance. But it's adapted, and the rules have been more heavy-handed. As the people in Georgia know, the last 2 years we've had a chairman he's literally a lobbyist for big government, and he's done a lot too. So we have a new chairman.
Yeah.
David Schaefer.
Yep.
Out of Gwinnett County.
GRA endorsed.
GRA endorsed, not the person I voted for.
Nope.
I voted for the person who got 11 votes.
And then you had Brant Frost, second vice chair.
He won second vice chair.
Yeah.
I did vote for Brant. And
also GRA.
Yes.
That's a good thing, man.
It is. Brant wants to come on the show. He will be
I
here
talked
at some
to him.
point. My buddy Nathaniel lost, unfortunately. These names don't mean anything to anybody, but there was a little bit of a win. I think things will get slightly better. I think it is worth the time for those that feel it is worth the time.
Yeah.
I wish more people, some of my old Ron Paul friends, would come. I did get a few of the listeners of the Rebellion who asked me, "Hey, how do I get involved next time?"
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So if you want to come, as long as there's a few people that are Liberty, that are supportive, I find the fight fun.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have a little bit more support because it is morally and emotionally taxing.
So we need to communicate better because obviously there's no way that I could have gone to this one. But
yeah, you had trip abroad.
This was one thing I could not make, but to know that, because I've never been to one of our conventions, and I kind of shy away from groups, man. I just don't like groups. I don't like crowds. I don't like any of that kind of stuff. I love being with my family and my friends in small, intimate type of settings, and
says the guy who wanted to be congressman.
Well, wanted is not the right word. Felt called to do so because of the abomination that we have there. But
next time I will be so happy to have you there. You do have a certain command, and you were a veteran, which they can't ignore.
And to have some Navy prep go into it. I mean,
So we had some prep. So Derek Somerville, who was on the show, was there. This was his first convention.
Yeah.
I liked the stoicism that he displayed in how he conducted himself. He was okay with getting as much as possible and not expending extra energy. And I think he saw it for what most people see it. So I as I said, I Facebooked during the whole convention.
Sure.
Just pretty angry, but pretty objective things. And the number of people, which happens every year, and which happens all year round, of people who see me involved in the Republican Party, they're like, "Hey, I've been to 2 conventions, and I saw that they don't care about the grassroots. They don't care about the principles, and I left." I understand that, but there's no but. I understand that.
Yeah.
It would be cool, though, to have them back and get our kind of... There's a Star Wars word, like Revenge of the Jedis. Is that one? No, it's not, is it?
Thanks. Do you realize this is made after that, and you don't know?
Pop culture is not my thing.
No, pop culture is not your thing. But I do want to take a second and tell you that between Derek and other people down there, they contacted me after it was all over while I was over in the UK, and they told me what a phenomenal job that you did, and that the Rebellion should be extremely proud. And I'll tell you, that's a very cool thing for people to either text or write or phone me to reach out and say, "Hey, you should have seen Banks down here." And it was really awesome. So,
Cool.
yeah.
I got like 50 friend requests that day from GOP people. So I
Yeah.
didn't actually meet them, I guess, but maybe they saw me speak or something.
Yeah.
I might have been the person who spoke the most. So
That's great, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take more and more of this, taking the fight to these people and making them understand or exposing them so that they're not around any longer.
here was my favorite moment, which I hope to paint for everybody, even the people who don't know Georgia politics. We're fighting, and there's this one amendment we're trying to make, basically to let us say,
Yeah.
let us have a vote on a Ralston resolution. And there's people going up to the mic back and forth on both sides. This one guy who's on the Ralston side, he was Ralston's campaign manager, like in name only. He's like this young guy, and no need to give his name out.
Sure.
But he goes up there and he makes one comment about he objects to this line of amendment or something like that. And then he goes up there again because we try to make the amendment multiple times. And I don't know if he prepared this. It looked like it was kind of genuine, but he went out and he said, these attempts to change the rules and the procedures and to cause chaos here, this is just another attempt by the same people that have been involved since 2012 trying to take over the Republican Party. The only thing he missed that he didn't say was these damn Ron Paul people. And I was waiting for him to say it. It would have probably hurt us if he had said it, in the fact that people, some like old codgers, establishment people would have remembered, oh, those Ron Paul people.
Oh,
But he
yeah.
basically said it, and I was just waiting for him to say, I was like, say Ron Paul people. Say Ron Paul
Let's get him on
people.
record.
So,
those people who love the Constitution. Oh, God almighty.
yeah.
Neat story, man.
I hope it was interesting. I know I went into
Here-
way too much detail.
Here's like I say a lot, is this is happening in your states. This is not just happening in Georgia.
Absolutely.
This is happening all across this country. And if you are not involved and you don't understand a lot of what goes on at convention, like myself, I'll be the first one to say it, that need to be more involved with that aspect as well.
I have somebody, or actually a group of people in almost every state that I can think of off the top of my head. Some more Democrat states, I don't know the people necessarily, but if you want to get involved,
Yeah.
I can like lead you to some people who are doing this currently, who would be happy to have another Liberty person in there. And the hopeful part is the average state is probably slightly better than Georgia. Georgia is particularly bad.
We're bad.
Both at the party level and the state house level, the capital. So you'll have an easier time and more influence and more opportunities to effectively fight for liberty in most states.
So if you want more information about that, you can contact Banks at info@rebellionpod.com, and he will turn you on to his contacts within the other states that can help you out.
Yeah,
a lot
of what we've mentioned before. That's the Pat McGeehans in West Virginia and Mike Folks. That's the Nick Freitas in Virginia, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, shall we move on?
We can.
We should.
Until next year. I'm so excited to have you there next year. We could have planned a little better. That's my fault.
Yeah, it's with everything that's going on, it's also definitely a lot of my own fault. So, do you want to get into the audience questions first, or do you want to tackle the little bit of Amash that we're going to talk about?
If we do Amash for a second, because if not, we won't get to the questions.
Okay,
and people want the questions.
Yeah, and I've had questions about Amash. I had my buddy Nick Pulse, who ran for Patrick's seat.
Ryan.
Ryan. Golly, what is his first name? I've already forgotten that guy.
The Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House up there in Minnesota. He ran for his seat.
Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter.
We need to have Nick on the show. I was in mid-flight going over to the UK when this all broke, and he said, "Hey, man, what is going on with Justin Amash?"
So real fast update for those who didn't follow. Justin Amash came out on Twitter and said that Trump should be impeached, and he had a pretty long, like 10 or 15 tweets explanation of why.
Yeah.
And so he's made like national news for weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been releasing a little bit more on Twitter every so often. Today he released more. None of it, in my opinion, has been very substantial, except for one thing. that I think we both got wrong.
What's that?
And I appreciate Amash for that, because some people, Republicans have been saying he's doing this only to get attention, Republicans and Trump. The left has been embracing him and be like, look at Amash.
Oh, sure.
He's the best thing since sliced bread.
I have a clip of that real quick if I can go ahead and play it. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's laugh for a second.
So this is Colbert, and this is actually pretty funny. So
Mitt Romney, who said this yesterday.
I respect him. I think it's a courageous statement. My own view is that Justin Amash has reached a different conclusion than I have.
Yes, his statement is courageous, and I choose not to engage in courage. That sounds kind of dangerous, frankly. Trump fired back at Amash, tweeting, "Never a fan of Justin Amash, a total lightweight who opposes me and some of our great Republican ideas and policies just for the sake of getting his name out there through controversy. This Justin Amash guy just wants to get his name out there, that name being Justin Amash." So, and I want to be clear to all 60 million of my followers, forget the name Justin Amash. That's A-M-A-S-H, Amash, Justin Amash. He is Justin Amash, Justin Amash.
So, I
don't like Colbert, but that was funny.
I don't either, but I'll tell you what, he's got a great Donald Trump impression.
Not bad.
Really pretty spot on. I mean, a lot of obviously the last part of that was ad lib, but only part of the tweet. But yeah, so before you tell me what you think Amash got right, when I answered Nick, I was kind of scratching my head too. You know, it was one of those things where I saw the tweets, I had read through the tweets, and I didn't see anything that would lend itself to impeachment per the Constitution when you look at things like treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors, which are all listed in there for what you need for impeachment of the President of the United States.
Mm-hmm. So I guess there's one thing that we got wrong that he commented on, not because of us, but that he commented, that would be cool.
Who's this? Justin commented on?
Yeah, that made me change my mind. And
okay.
That is that you don't have to. There doesn't have to be a crime for you to, for obstruction of justice.
Okay.
So, and that is because theoretically. So this is why I'm somewhat unhappy with Justin, because I think that it's a failure to meld two things together.
Yeah.
One that is very logical and theoretical with something that is not of the same value. So I think it is logical to say, hey, you don't necessarily need a crime, because if you obstruct justice efficiently, like if you do it correctly, if you obstruct justice and you're successful, then that's obstruction of justice, and
Sure.
you obstructed it to where they can't actually pinpoint the crime. That's the whole point of obstruction justice, right?
Right.
And so I was like, oh, and it might seem like a small thing, but I was like, oh, we've been saying on the podcast a few times, hey, if there's no crime, how can you obstruct justice?
Right.
You have to make the differentiation between real crimes and fantasy crimes then. So that's the difference. That's the libertarian difference. That's if you're obstructing justice for because the cops say you have cannabis, then yeah, you can't obstruct justice because there's no actual crime there.
Yeah.
But you don't. If you're talking about a real crime, you still don't need to be able to pinpoint at the crime for there to be obstruction.
That's what I get back to still, Banks, is when I look at this and I go, what crime are they investigating? There was never ever a crime even named. You know?
Okay, no. So this is why I say those 2 points together, I think, makes it hard for people, unless people want to go above and beyond the analysis. It makes it hard for people to react simply to Justin's point. He has a theoretical point that should have been made apart from this.
Oh, I don't think this was a wise move.
The point about him thinking there are specific impeachable offenses about this specific Russia thing, like I don't think I agree on that. But there is another point that is separate that he didn't make, but that I've kind of reading all this came to, is that actually anything is an impeachable offense. If 2/3, well, hear me out. High crimes and misdemeanors are not actually defined, even if they weren't defined in the Constitution. even if they were defined, if 2/3 of the Congress says impeach, they can impeach for the color of your hair.
Yeah, but no, they can't. No,
that's how power works.
Yeah, but it's not how. Okay, power.
Who stops them? They're not going to do that. But
well, yeah, obviously that's why it goes to the Senate to be tried.
Okay, but that's the impeachment. Then the Senate does a trial, and then they can convict with 2/3 of the Senate too.
Yeah.
But they can and I actually think this is a interesting exercise for people, and it goes down to explaining that government is about power.
Yeah, just because they can do something doesn't mean that they have been delegated the power to do something. And you'll hear a lot of politicians who are in office equivocate the same thing. We can do whatever the heck we want to do as long as we have the majority to do it.
But this one is a little bit different because the only characteristics are treason, bribery, high crimes and misdemeanors. High crimes and misdemeanors not being specifically defined.
But they are defined per U.S. Code 18, and they are defined per the law.
But not in the Constitution itself, which is the only thing to have an oath to. Even if it's defined somewhere else, you don't think that the left has moved. The left says that how things are right and healthcare is right, and all these things. This is how this points a magnifying glass on the problem. Some people call it the necessary evil, but on the problem that in the end it's just a power, and you don't think that the left, if they wanted to, in a smart way. I'm not talking about the people who are like out there in Looney Tunes land, but even if we disagree, in a smart way, could come up with 25,000. Maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but 100 reasons why they actually think that Trump has created high crimes and misdemeanors. Of course it could. And so that's how you have to understand, in the end, everything's an impeachable offense. I hope that's not where Justin is going long term, because he hasn't explained very well what he's talking about.
Yeah, and I don't even agree with that. I don't even agree with everything's an impeachable offense, because somewhere they're going to have to find a law that is pursuant to the Constitution per Article 6, Section 2. And when they make that link to then investigate that crime, misdemeanor, whether bribery, treason, or a felony in this case, high crime is what they call them, then at that point there is the ability to impeach. But outside of that, constitutionally there's no room for impeachment outside of that. I understand.
So many of the founders.
That's constitutionally speaking versus what is happening in the United States today, which is not, which is practically speaking.
Okay, but constitutionally speaking, you're resting part of your argument about crimes on U.S. code. We talk all the time that there's enough laws out there for that we as normal, active, I don't like the word citizens, but individuals commit 3 felonies a day.
But that's not what the Mueller report did. It's not. They were investigating something completely different.
I'm talking in the theoretical at this point. I said the Russia stuff. I think that that Justin has a very, very loose foundation going on there. And worse, I don't think he's explained it very well. He's being very coy and very broad.
Yeah.
Which I think is an interesting intellectual discussion about the fact that, you don't need a crime for this, and everything is potentially an impeachable offense, that's more me saying that than Justin. And I find that annoying, but it's good information anyways. And it does mean, as I said, every Republican or every Democrat could find a reason to impeach the president of the opposing party at any time.
Well, and the thing is, you could do that with anybody who is in the government. Anybody who is holding an elected seat can be impeached.
Ralston could be removed from office for all that. It takes two-thirds of the House.
Yeah, and that's all it is. I mean, once you are impeached, you can no longer hold office.
He could potentially, and I think he has committed certain crimes, but let's say all he did was follow the letter of the law, which is a bad law. Mm-hmm. They could still decide, if 2/3 decide, that is the power. And there's nobody above that. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Supreme Court doesn't get to weigh in on impeachment.
Nope, they don't.
They are the last line. The House and the Senate are the last line.
That's it. Yeah, Senate is the judge and jury.
And so I had a few people comment on that, because I talked about it on Facebook. And I see that there is a fear in some people's mind of seeing the end of where government ends and being like, well, who holds them accountable to being right or not? I'm like, That's the problem.
That's us.
Well,
I mean,
we don't work, though. It doesn't work. People are not holding the government accountable.
Not
so
yet.
the solution, there's no end solution. We're not going to have like perfection on earth. The solution is to give government less power so that we have less things we have to hold them accountable to, because it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Almost impossible to do. So that's my take on the situation.
Yeah, I'm baffled by the whole thing. Are
you curious about why Amash is doing it? Or
I am. To this day, because I mean, Justin's one of those guys. He's one of the very few guys up there on Capitol Hill that, without question, a lot of times I'm sitting there going, he's probably right. I mean, the guy's got a 90+ rating out there for upholding the United States Constitution.
At the end of the year, he'll have been in there for 10 years, and he's missed one vote.
Yeah.
And it was by accident, and he was like running to get back to the voting machine.
Yeah, and he explains every vote he takes. That's not something that most congressmen do.
So I was listening to Part of the Problem with Dave Smith, and I was disappointed. I'm rarely disappointed with Dave, but I was disappointed because Dave doesn't seem to know enough about Justin Amash, and I'm perplexed because he starts out saying things like, "Well, Justin's going to be redistricted. Michigan is losing a congressional seat, and it looks like that's going to have a big effect on him losing a seat. It's going to be a Democrat area, and so is it even worth him running, especially?" With the fact that it's you vote by party in Michigan, and so if you're not at the top of the ticket,
well, maybe that's
even
it
if
too,
you're
right?
a good guy who appeals to a broader base, so some of the independents, if those independents are voting for the Democrat president, you get lost, which is a horrible system, by the way.
Would you? I mean, what you just said. I mean, the fact that he will be in when he is redistricted,
Most likely
a Democrat district. I mean, if I were the people who were in charge of Michigan, strategically, I would obviously try to do exactly that: is get rid of him on from the Republican side, because he's not a Republican and he's definitely not a Democrat. And the thing is how all these things work behind the scenes. It's Democrats and Republicans, WWF or WWE out there in front of the cameras until deals need to be made, and then they're best friends and they go and have drinks and everything else together. If I'm the Democrats in Michigan, I do exactly that. Now, and this is all speculation at this point.
So Democrats don't like him because he's a Republican.
Yeah.
And the Republicans don't like him because he exposes the Republicans.
Does he do something like this and be able to now run a more effective campaign for re-election in a district that is, obviously his, but, has been remapped to
appeal to Democrats?
To appeal to
the
Democrats.
problem is the party voting. So you can appeal to Democrats.
Is that how it is in Michigan?
Yeah. So it's one of the few states where you can party vote. Like you push Democrat, you vote for all the Democrat candidates, which is
God, how archaic.
It's insane.
And childish.
So the problem is I ran a campaign where he had won the Republican primary, but it was in a Democrat district, like 70-30, and we went door to door to Democrats and we're like, you need to vote for this guy. And we had people excited. We actually, his name is Carter Kessler. He was a Ron Paul fanboy and tried to run in Athens, Georgia, which is pretty Democrat. That north portion, at least. There's a southern portion of Athens.
Yeah. God, my buddy, he's a Democrat. Actually, Spencer Fry is.
He ran against Spencer Fry.
Yeah, Spencer is
Spencer's a buddy of yours.
He's a really good friend of mine, and
really good friend.
Yeah, when I was in college, I'd go out and listen to the Spencer Fry Explosion or whatever it was. They're a great band, man, and that's
hilarious.
We had a lot of great talks. I mean, he was an older guy, but yeah, I'd go over to his
he's
place.
a state rep now.
Yeah, we've talked.
He wasn't the most willing to discuss ideas, but he was polite and respectful.
Extremely polite and respectful.
Cool kids.
Yeah, and he's got that vein in him where it's just he was just raised in a much different way than we were, but at the same time, I'll tell you, the better guy. It's hard. Like I was taken back with what a nice guy he was, and the amount of time that we would just sit there and talk out there, it was pretty cool. And this is long before.
You think you could reach out to him, ask him to come on the show?
Oh, absolutely, anytime.
Do it.
Yeah.
He knows you. He knows of me.
Yeah. I mean, he called me during the campaign and was like,
he would know
hey,
that we'll at least be fair and not throw him under the bus.
Yeah. He's like, I really appreciate what what you're doing out there and everything else, and good luck to you. And, you're a stand-up guy. And I mean, just, and that's the thing is, just because somebody's got a different, party label next to their name doesn't mean that you can't communicate with them. I mean,
absolutely,
and share a lot in common. I mean, that's the thing.
I actually want to do more of that. I told you I wanted to name some of our episodes Common Ground, and get a bunch of progressives and I know Green Party or whatever on the show and find some common ground.
Yeah.
But so I ran that race and we talked to tons of Democrats and people would be like, yeah, I'm voting for you. Per our numbers, we should have been much closer. But in the end,
it's Athens, man.
It takes effort, and even the people.
It's like the poorest.
Even the people who would have voted for him, like you have to go down the ticket to find Carter. They forget when they're actually there. They're like, oh, he's got an R next to his name. Like they forgot Carter was one of the most personable people ever, and so that's
a tough match, man.
It's kind of delusional. But Dave Smith did say maybe he's going to run as a Democrat. That's why he's doing all this and so forth.
Oh no, I don't think I ever see Justin running as a Democrat.
I don't think it's possible.
No, there's too much principle.
How could
there.
you? Because he wouldn't lie about at least one or two things, and those two things would disqualify him as a Democrat.
Yeah.
And running as a Libertarian, though, it's really hard because you get a Libertarian ballot, you've got almost nobody, so most people want the Democrat or I guess it's a general election, but if you're voting by party,
I think he continues to run as a Republican. I thought I saw somewhere the other day too that he was actually still gonna run no matter what. So, at any rate,
then there's the idea that he run for president.
I will be very interested to follow the story though, because he's not being quiet about it. When we were doing a little bit of show prep, we looked at the tweets, and I'll tell you what, the tweets over just the past 4 hours, there's a ton of them. I mean, he went on a tirade talking about this, and I'm gonna have to do some more investigative.
Still nothing very new.
No, and that's the thing is, where this all goes, that's the question that I have now. Is I'm going to reserve judgment. I want to see what exactly he knows, if he's holding his cards closer to his chest. I mean, he is a pretty measured guy. He's an extremely principled guy, and when it comes to the constitutional voting, I wish we had 435 other people just like him.
Whatever people say, so I think that's the right approach. I think he's proven himself. That's why I think Dave Smith is wrong. Dave Smith even said, well, he did vote against the war in Syria. And I'm like, he's voted against all the wars. He's not that they actually have real votes on that, but he's voted against all the AUMFs. He's spoken out against the wars all the time.
NDAA,
it's like
mass
Dave,
surveillance.
Where were you?
Yeah.
Like, have a little bit more respect. I don't think he gets everything right, and I don't agree with him on this.
He may just not be that guy that he knows, man. He somehow just flew under the radar.
It got on my nerves. Dave Smith needs to show a little bit more respect. But yeah, I am curious, like you, to see where this goes. But at the very least, like he's the most fiscal responsible of the whole House if you take in votes. More
even Massey?
Massey is very close to him in like billions of dollars.
Massey's that golden child spent, up there, man.
But Amash has actually voted for slightly less spending than Massey. They're very close.
Hopefully, we get to interview quite a few of these guys on episode 100. But
that would be. I don't think either of those are going to be there actually. But Matt has still promised to get Massey on the show. So
well, let's get into something really fun. We had asked you guys back on May 14th. Banks put this up. It said submit your questions for Banks and Shane, politics, personal, and anything in between. You guys did not disappoint. And I love, like, the last show we did like this, the listener driven podcast. We told you guys, if you guys do this kind of stuff, we're going to do more of these, because I think it's
apparently they like it.
I think it's
last time we had like 6 or 7 questions. This time we have like I don't know 20
plus questions on here. So we'll just kind of get to them
a bunch
in order. I mean, and it pays to be a winner, right? When we throw something up, be one of the first people to respond. Our good friend Rachel Kennerly over at Cannabis Heals Me asked, what is the grossest thing Banks has ever stepped on while barefoot?
So for those who don't know, I'm barefoot most of the time that I can be, at least. I would be more if it was socially acceptable. The grossest thing, probably when I was a kid.
Socially acceptable to walk in here with your Walmart bare feet. into the house.
Does it bother you, Shay?
I'm kidding.
So my theory is that my feet, the bottom of my feet are as dirty as the bottom of my shoes. And so it shouldn't actually bother anybody. Unless, like, I'm bleeding from my feet.
Or, unless you practice some of the Eastern culture where they actually take their shoes off when they enter houses, right?
So that's the point.
That's going to be tough for you.
You made a point.
Luckily for you, I'm not Asian.
I do have a friend who makes me wash my feet before I
Really?
walk.
So what's the grossest thing you ever stepped on?
When I was a kid, like, we had dogs. There was a backyard. I've, like, ran through that.
Dog poop, yeah.
As an adult, I got out of my car once and stepped into vomit. It was bad.
Yeah.
So this is quite disgusting.
Dog poop or vomit, huh?
Yeah.
That's-
I've also stepped on a nail. It went all the way through. That was not as gross, but it's the worst experience I had.
Yeah. Was it just out in the yard or on a street or
in the grass? I didn't really see it. Rusty nail all the way through.
your favorite shopping center? I was gonna say, is the grossest thing you ever stepped on the Walmart bathroom floor?
No, I don't go into
I'm
public
kidding.
bathrooms barefoot. I'm not.
Do you go into public places barefoot?
So there's one period of time where I went barefoot for about 6 months.
Yeah.
I worked for Georgia Gunners at the time, and my buddy Patrick let me. He was not happy about it. He called me hippie every day. But and I went 6 months without. I put on shoes twice. But I'd go to the bank barefoot, and they knew me, so they thought it was funny as hell. I'd go to my UPS store, which I've been going to for like a decade now, barefoot. I'd go to Publix. I've been kicked out of Publix once for being barefoot.
Wow.
But
yeah, they have signs up there: no shirt, no shoes, no service.
I got no service that day.
That's funny. The next question on here from Mr. Gray Jackson is position on public lands. By that, I'm specifically talking national forests, parks, etc. What's the best way to keep them accessible to all, but not overregulated by any level of government? I struggle with this because if we turn them over
to private hands, they'll most likely be exploited for resources or even broken up and sold off. But at the same time, the state shouldn't have the right to do whatever they want in the name of conservation.
Yeah. So,
what's your take?
Well, first and foremost, should never ever be federal. Per Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, I think it's Clause 17, it describes the 10 square miles that the federal government has claim to, and it also, with the state's permission, forts, ports, magazines.
What are magazines exactly?
Are
those places where you like have ammo and so forth?
Yeah,
okay.
Like stockyards and things like that. So forts, ports, magazines, anything kind of related to national defense type thing. So at the federal level, no, there should not be any publicly owned federal lands.
So no federal parks, no federal data centers, no federal spying facilities, no federal airports.
And that's the thing.
No federal museums.
No, none of these things. Constitutionally speaking, federal, you don't have the permission to be there. The only things that you could put as the feds, forts, ports, magazines, like dockyards, and they say other needful buildings, but other needful
in the Constitution.
It does.
Huh.
But that obviously, in the spirit of the law here, what they're talking about is defense. So when you're putting up your other needful buildings, they are in probably support of the forts, ports, and magazines.
Okay.
At the state level, man, public land. I've had a problem with just land being owned for a long time anyway, right? First of all, nobody owns land. Everybody pays taxes on their land to the crown here in the United States. So it's kind of a misnomer to sit there and say that, there is any private land, because there's not.
Actually, there are a few people.
Tell me about it, Banks.
So we should do an episode on this whole thing one day. But I went down a internet rabbit hole, 3 o'clock in the morning, Wikipedia adventure years ago. About titles, and there's allodial titles and feudal titles. Feudal titles are what we have now, which is based on, like, back in the day, it was the king actually owned it. He just let you like live there. You paid rent property tax is what we have today. And allodial titles are actually where you are the king of that area. And within the United States, there are a number, I don't remember how many, but there was a list of examples of people who before the United States was constituted had allodial titles, and that has been respected. It was, I think there's like a college in Massachusetts. It's usually like universities and colleges that have something, and that started way back when, that have allodial titles, and they don't actually have to pay property tax specifically because of that. Not because they're like a church and not taxed thing. And it's quite interesting.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is I don't know what the correct, I don't know if there is a correct. What I would say is you definitely want it decentralized as much as possible, that lands that are within maybe a county or parish or something like that are maybe set aside by a local group of people, I think is probably, where I come down. But, in terms of taking money by force to protect and do things, obviously I'm not that guy. It's one of those things that, I'm very happy that there are private groups out there, such as, hunters, who are the biggest conservationists out there, that will raise awareness and money and do more things to protect the resources of a land, including the fish and game and all that fun stuff. But I think that's where it really resides. I think when people understand that you have to have those type of things out there, the market takes care of it.
I definitely think at the very least, like Shane said, it should be at the most local level possible. I'm not saying that it's not scary. The idea of like, oh, well, everything's just going to be industrialized and there's going to be no land, no places you can go to see the wilderness. But I think that is a lack of confidence in like the human spirit.
Well, it's also a lack of being in an airplane. Have you ever flown over the United States?
Well, we haven't been able to test it out. The federal government owns, if you go like west of Colorado, the federal government like owns like
west of Mississippi, it's
60
90
or
something percent.
70 or 80%. It's like it's insane.
It's crazy.
So first thing, like we haven't been given a chance, but imagine that we have that chance. Sometimes you need problems to arise. You need to see nature destroyed for then the market to correct itself, which it corrects itself through individuals. So people like you and me saying, oh, we need to protect that. In the long term, who is going to do a better job at protecting things? Is it going to be the government, which is literally a system that says, hey, whoever is better at taking control can do whatever they want with all this? Or is it going to be people that have personal, direct, tangible, like ownership of something? I think it's going to be the people who have personal, tangible, direct ownership of things.
Stake in that land, for whether it's homesteading or farming or ranching or whatever the case may be. Like when their livelihood depends on that land, that's going to be the people who take the most interest in it and do the most work for it. So
and the livelihood, the people I've heard who are the most vehement against getting rid of federal national parks are hunters. But take that away, hunters would want a place to go, like you said, and there would be a market-driven reason for people to be like, okay, we're going to all get band together and buy a big piece of land. And I think that there would also be a market for public lands, some that you might pay. But right now, you go to national parks and you're paying for parking.
Yeah, and
get there before 6 a.m. and you can get in there without paying. There's nobody there.
And when the federal government has a shutdown, they shut them down. That's a huge problem. It's you can't get to federal land when the park rangers shut it down. They'll still be there to tell you can't come in. They're still working, but they're not maintaining the parks. And you're just sitting there going, God, like this is our federal. They're gonna pull that type of deal. Rather than addressing the actual, real budget, they're just going to close down the parks for you. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, that's kind of, it's
not free right now. Like it's not actually public. It's public land and that you can go, but it's not free.
No, if it's everybody's land, it's nobody's land.
The cost of it is astronomical. On top of the fact there is on a fee, like a nominal fee, every time you go on top of it.
Yeah.
And seniors get to go there for cheaper because apparently seniors are like more important people. I'm actually annoyed by that. Seniors get a discount for all the national parks. That's like $100 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why seniors
You're on fixed income.
care more. Fixed income is
Social Security.
It's such a bad argument. It's socialism is what it is.
I know it is. Yeah, I'm just being a little obtuse over here.
This is just a personal point of annoyance.
Mr. Jackson,
I think we've answered that one.
I hope we've answered your question. Justin Lancaster, buddy, couldn't resist a more personal question. What are your favorite musical artists, bands, favorite Liberty songs?
Well, we know that Shane loves Greta Van Vliet.
Man.
And he's gone on and on and on about... I'm kidding, Shane.
Let me play you a little tune. So
not too long or YouTube's going to kick us off.
Yeah, I didn't show it, and I just played it just a little bit there. And
fair use. We're arguing fair use.
Yeah, under 30 seconds, we're good. That's one of my favorite new songs, and I say that because I never really had a song with my wife. You know how couples have songs and everything, and that song, when I hear it, it reminds me of her, and so I've kind of just adopted it as my song with Meredith. Actually, after we went to
so your wife
concert.
is just all right.
No, she's out of sight. This is what it said. Banksy, if you were listening to the music, you were feeling it.
It said she's all right. She's all right.
She's out of sight. After that,
okay.
Yeah. Yes, but
I thought I got you there.
No, so some of the reason behind that is we have that fire pit out back. And what we like to do, and I think what we'll probably be introducing soon, and I know we've talked about it in the past, is the reemergence of her blog rebranded and another podcast that I'll probably be doing mostly,
a family-oriented podcast,
more of a family-oriented podcast, because we feel like we've got a really strong, loving relationship, and we want to help other couples who are out there who might be struggling with that, kind of conquer some things that they may be dealing with and open up for questions, how to deal with kids and life and jobs and maybe one income, homeschooling, whatever it is, because we feel like we've got something really special and we want to share that with people. But to get back to it, that fire pit out back, what really strengthened our relationship was the ability to unplug from everything, go back out there, turn the fire pit on, and sit and talk into the evening, just each other with, a little bit of music going in the background maybe, and having those really, deep and intimate conversations about, our kids and our relationship, our hopes, our dreams, our aspirations, and things like that. And so that's why, when it talks about seeing the starlight in her eyes and all that kind of stuff, like that's why it does it. That's cool. What about you, man? What's your favorite?
So his second part is Liberty songs, but my non-Liberty favorite song right now or band is called Munica.
Munica.
It's
you got a sample over there?
I do.
I'm ready to hear it. I can't wait to hear it.
It's very chill.
Is it jazzy? Yep.
I don't like jazz that much, actually.
Well, I know that you're young, and I know you're naive, but you know that you got sugar under your sleeve. But the way.
So yeah, that is most of their songs.
Who is it?
It's Munica.
Munica.
Mounika.
Huh. What's the song called?
It's called I Feel the Love.
Right on.
And there's a specific part twice in this song where they cut the music for like a quarter of a second. And it's a really cool feeling.
Just a pause.
It's a pause, and that specific part of the song, like I could listen to it.
It makes your sense want more.
It does. It's something very. So
it's deprivation.
They they have a few songs that have some French influence in there. I don't know why. I haven't even looked into them that much. I've listened to them maybe.
Where did you? How long have you known about these guys?
6-7 months.
Yeah.
This is what I usually do. Like, I find a song that I like,
Just play it till you can't play it anymore, till your ears are bleeding.
and then it just goes into my list of songs I like.
Right.
Like, before, my very favorite is the White Stripes. So Seven Nation Army.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite songs
Yeah, it's a
ever.
great
I
song.
still like it, but it just this will go into my list of like favorite songs. Before that, I like the Rolling Stones. Sympathy for the Devil is one of my favorite songs ever.
Huh.
So yeah.
That's a great song,
But
too.
I don't like jazz, by the way. It has a tiny bit of jazz in it.
Yeah, it's that
but-
little bit of top hat in there, you know. And
Just a little bit. Too much jazz.
pretty easy, but then it kicks into a different gear there, and it's pretty cool. I'm going to have to try that one out.
The lyrics are very enjoyable, and you can listen to them.
Yeah.
Lyrics that I can't understand annoy me.
Really? Did you ever see that movie Bohemian Rhapsody about Queen?
I have not.
Oh man, there's a great line in there. He's like, "I don't even know what you're saying." Like he's one of the producers that, at any rate, he's like, "I don't even know what you're saying." And these guys, you know, like one of them, I believe, is a dentist. The other one is like a physicist or something like that.
The musicians
The
themselves?
musicians, I mean, really pretty smart guys, and so they're like, yeah, and that builds this, you know, this wonder about what we are saying, and lets other people fill in, you know, the gaps for themselves.
I can appreciate that, but I do. So when there's a good song where I can hear
Yeah.
the lyrics and I can understand the lyrics and the lyrics mean something to me, which I'm sure I'm like,
What-
that's not actually their intended
Yeah.
purpose, but I don't care.
What's your style of music? I mean, if you had to pick just one kind of style of music to listen to for the rest of your life, what would you say it would?
That's a hard question.
I
would
tell you,
be-
I'm a classic rock guy, man. Like the Jimi Hendrix, I mean, Watchtower, CCR, things, AC/DC, along those lines, like really good Southern kind of soul music. And I'll tell you what, I've been listening to that group also, Ida May, lately. Kind of a return to that kind of stuff. But I'm kind of curious.
So I've heard this is categorized as chill house rock, and it would probably be something in the chill house rock or in the instrumental EDM, which is instrumental electronic music. So bands like Tycho and STS9, which is based out of Atlanta, especially Tycho. It's very chill too, and it takes you on journeys of sorts.
Yeah.
I like that.
Let your mind-
I used to like more like alternative rock. That's kind of why I liked the White Stripes. But as I've gotten older, things that are chill, and that help me put in some kind of meditative, peaceful state, are definitely like, if I run to this, I will every so often just get lost in the music and find myself like just running to the pace of the music. That's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like a junkie. I'm trying to find that high, and if I force it too much, I just do my normal running. But if I space out by accident,
that's when you know you're
5 minutes later, I'll realize, oh, look at this.
That's when you know you're in running shape, and it just feels great.
Yeah, I'm not in running shape right now.
I haven't ran in years. Not really ran anyway.
So, Justin also asked our favorite Liberty songs. Do you have a favorite Liberty song?
Fortunate Son, probably, by CCR. It's a little, you know, the first few times I heard it, I don't think I ever knew what it was actually about, and then
What is it about?
oh man, it's definitely like he's not talking about he's not the guy that's wrapping himself in the flag, like yeah. And you know, when I first heard it, this was way back, obviously. I thought, oh, not my kind of guy. Great beat, great band and all that fun stuff. But then I actually listened to the lyrics. I think this was while I was, a very young Marine. I was like, oh, who's this hippie? And then as I obviously matured and began to question a few more things out there, I went back and obviously heard the lyrics again. And it's funny how your whole outlook just changes when you hear certain things.
So short challenge.
Sure.
How about at the end of the show, we make a small playlist? 5 songs from each of us. And I'll include the link in the show notes.
Cool.
So my favorite Liberty song, like I'm a Ron Paul fan forever. Her name is Amy Allen. She used to be on MTV back in the day. She became a big Ron Paul fan, and she wrote the Ron Paul anthem is what the song is called. And I'll play like I'll try not to play the whole thing.
Just a little.
Just a little, but I want to listen to the whole thing. But I won't, I promise.
Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Good! Wake up in America! Rise and shine! Wake up! Rise and shine! Save our constitutional rights! We're not gonna give up the fight!
So
She lost me with constitutional rights. No.
it is an awesome song. The video of it, which you cannot find on YouTube anymore because it got flagged for copyright something, but you can find it on Daily Motion if you Google Amy Allen Ron Paul anthem. I'm not even sure if this is on Spotify, so it might not be included in the playlist. But it's an awesome song. Amy Allen is a awesome artist in her own right. She does other music. And she also has a song called Universal Soldier, which we won't play this time because the audio that I could find is really bad.
The record labels are probably knocking down her door for being such a Liberty type of singer, huh?
But Universal Soldier is a beautiful song about how the powers that be could not necessarily do what they did unless they had the foot soldiers who actually have the power to say no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. And at the Rally for the Republic, which was in 2009 after Ron Paul in 2008 after he ran for president the first time as a Republican, he had a Rally for the Republic in, I believe, Minnesota with 10,000 people.
Wow.
And he went on stage and said things, and then he asked Amy Allen, "Hey, can you play this song? This is my favorite song of yours."
Wow.
And he talks about the event Christmas Eve during World War I, where the Germans and the British stopped fighting and sing Christmas carols together, and why this song is evocative of that. And there's a video of that on YouTube. It makes me cry almost every single time.
Yeah.
So that's music for you guys.
Well, all right.
If you enjoyed the playlist, tell us, like tweet something or something at Rebellion Pod. Say, hey, awesome song, or tweet at us with new songs or something.
Yeah, let us know what yours are. I'm very interested. I mean,
I'm extremely interested. We will compile your favorite songs and put it into the playlist of the audience.
That'd be pretty cool.
I'm channeling Crushing It doing that.
You don't want to talk about it until next time.
We already talked about it.
You know what we need to do is, what we need to do is get on Apple Music and then create a Rebellion.
We can do both. We can do Spotify. I use Spotify.
Okay.
You can use the
right
Apple.
on. I'm in.
And we'll have 2 links for you guys.
You got the next one over there?
Yeah, let me go back to the questions.
Deborah.
So this is from Deborah. She says, "No question, just statement. All caps. Please, Shane, run again. We, the people, need you."
We will address that soon. Just a little teaser for everybody out there. We will we'll address the potential run here in the near future. We're kind of talking through everything still. Obviously, it's a huge decision, guys. I mean,
it's a huge decision. Last time you ran, we didn't make the decision until, well, nobody knew about it until August 12th. So we actually have plenty of time.
Yeah.
But we have been talking about it a lot since the end of the campaign.
Yeah, and I'll tell you. I mean, trust me. I appreciate everybody who's reached out. Who's encouraged it, who has really just been with us ever since the beginning.
I think it's just because they want Banks to have a job. I just talked about myself in the third person. Oh.
Okay, it's your AI. Don't worry, man. What is your? This comes from Chris Knight. Your favorite drink while debating family at reunions?
So I guess my reunions are over Christmas with my family.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law, who is the most open to my ideas in that his main focus is civility. Like before he goes to government, he's like, people just need to be like good to each other. Mm-hmm. He is a wine connoisseur of epic proportion, and I like wine, but I don't want to put any effort into knowing stuff about wine. But he'll bring out these awesome bottles and tell me all about it, and they're always like much better than your average bottle. Much more expensive too, I'm pretty sure. But I really enjoy him bringing out bottles and saying this is good and this is bad, and teaching me about what they're supposed to taste like and where they're from. And
wine, huh?
So yeah, I like some very dry red wine.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, Okay. Right on.
None of that sweet girly stuff.
None of the Merlots or the Pinot Noirs.
So those are okay, but I'm talking like none of the Riesling.
Oh, that's white wine.
Oh, that is. But what's the sweet red wine? There's one.
Oh, port?
No, that is a little bit sweeter, but there's a sweet red wine. I can't remember what it is.
I like wines. I can't drink them too much. They give me a bit of a headache, man.
So my brother-in-law would tell you that you have to find wines that have less sulfates in them because it's the sulfates that give you a headache.
Is that what just dehydrates you then?
I'm not exactly sure.
I think it's the
But
dehydration.
that would make sense.
Yeah, it might. Yeah, it does make sense. Favorite drink for debating or really just kind of any occasion? I'm a bourbon guy. On the
any
rocks.
occasion.
On the rocks, bourbon. I'm good with it. Yeah, that's the thing is it wasn't something that I grew up liking by any stretch of the imagination. People would ship it to me while I was overseas, and it came in a nice plastic bottle with a Jim Beam label on it, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth on bourbon. We would sit around sometimes maybe too late into the evening having a couple glasses of bourbon. And funny story, couple of those times where we had probably had too much, then an order would come out and they'd be like, "Hey, you got to go, man." And you're like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, man, we got a mission." And so it's probably
Were you guys not expecting the mission?
no
Okay.
11:30, 12 o'clock. Well, and that's the thing is we only did this on nights where we said, when we were told, like, listen, there's nothing in the pipe coming down tonight, and then heaven forbid, we never got out of hand by any stretch of the imagination.
How dare the enemy not like respect the plans here?
Well,
are you saying that they have a certain guerrilla warfare that might make it
very
more
tough?
difficult?
Yeah,
Okay.
very tough to do to implement it. So at any rate, there was a couple times where you're like, oh, you know what? What's funny is a couple bourbons in your system, and you feel like Superman anyway. Especially at that young age, you're like, screw it, I'll be the first one in the door. I don't care. And but yeah, that was where I actually really learned to like bourbon, and ever since then, I try as much of it as I can in terms of trying to taste, but a couple drinks a month, I'm done. I'm not a big drinker, man.
When's the first time you had a taste of liquor?
Liquor, like real liquor?
Yeah.
Oh man, I was young, man. And the thing is, I come from an Irish heritage, where my dad's side of the family was very loose with letting kids try things, and rightfully so. It was one of those things that we always believed that that taste is more of an acquired taste, right? And when you're young and you don't like the taste of things, it's a really good time to introduce those tastes. At one point I was made, I think at 7 years old, I was asked after my cousins visiting if I would like a can of beer, and they were all gone. So the cool factor had worn off. Now it was just me and my dad out on the picnic table with a can of warm Pabst Blue Ribbon. And he said, if you open it, you got to drink it all. And I was like, I'm in. So I opened it, I drank it. I about barfed everywhere.
You drank the whole thing?
I had to. That was
Wow.
that was the condition that I agreed to, and so we sat there. It took a while. Choking down some warm.
Nowadays, if somebody heard it, you might have defects coming to your house and be like, "How dare you do that?" My parents had me taste a little bit of things here and there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think my dad had some Irish Mist, which
I don't know what that is.
I think it's a really awful Scotch or something.
Yeah. I don't like any dark liquors. So
Really?
Scotch, whiskey, bourbon. I like gin a lot.
Really?
I don't drink a lot. I said a lot. I was like, no, not make people think that. But I like gin, and
Yeah.
that's about it.
My dad had me try some Irish Mist, and at that point in my life, I decided I didn't like that stuff at all. And I think I'm still there. I'm not a Scotch guy at all. Love bourbon. Cannot
What's the
stand
difference between
Scotch.
Scotch and bourbon? They seem
Well, so bourbon it has to be 51% corn mash. And so and that's
who says so?
the federal government. Is that not the craziest thing in the world?
It is.
I went on a bourbon tour just recently, and to hear their overbearing involvement inside of the bourbon industry, just like, wow, man, that's it. And
Just the other day, apparently Trump, nice laps there. Trump is deregulating the cherry pie industry. And I kid you not,
The cherry
apparently
pie industry.
before recently, like a week ago or something, there was federal regulation on how many cherries had to go into a cherry pie,
Wow.
which is way worse than the bourbon thing.
God. What an absolute cluster.
Apparently, the reasoning behind that was because they were scared that people were going to put too few cherries and like skimp on the customers. And like, if the customers don't like a cherry pie, they're not going to buy your damn cherry pie. Maybe they like a pie with few cherries in it.
So,
who knows?
So what does that do? It automatically favors
Increases the price of cherries.
Well, you either got a really fast cherry counter, or you got a machine that does the work for you that creates cherry pies. And who do you think did that? The cherry pie industry, where the big boys wanted to squash the little people from entry into the market. Guarantee you.
Yeah, it's hard to count out cherries when you're
Oh no, they're not counting out cherries. They're getting a waiver for a machine to weigh a certain amount of cherries to sit there and probably say, it's probably within our federal regulations and guidelines. Here you go. Have fun making cherry pies, big guys. You guys over there, forget about it. Crazy, all right? Well, hey, we're an hour and 36.
Let's take one more question. Let me scroll through and find one.
Do you want to get the Matthew? I'm going to read this while you're finding the question. It's a simple question of weight ratios. This one cracked me up. It's a simple question of weight ratios. A 5-ounce bird could not carry a 1-pound coconut. Of course, we all know that. In order to maintain airspeed velocity, a swallow needs to beat its wings 43 times every second. But what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? The airspeed velocity, I don't know who you think's on this show, but it is not Thomas Massey.
We know about politics. We don't know about them.
Well, the thing is I remember reading this, and I was gonna poke back at Matthew and say, well, how much does he weigh? But he clearly says it weighs 5 ounces, so you can't determine velocity without weight. But he clearly did it for me, and I'm still not going to approach that question. Did you find one over there?
I did. So I have one non-question from Ron. Ron says, I have no less than 10 questions I scream at the radio during one of your podcasts. Why don't you answer them? Well, Ron,
we can't hear you.
Why don't you send an email or something? It's funny, though, because I like the idea of them being curious, because I do that when I listen to podcasts. I'm like, oh, what? I don't actually scream them, but I think them in my head.
Yeah.
But I do have a question from Greg Brown. He said, I recently read that Ron Paul supports Tulsi Gabbard for president in 2020. What do you guys think about her and her policies?
Oh, boy. This is a can of worms, Banks.
There's one correction, is that he doesn't support, like, he wouldn't vote for her. He says that she's the best Democratic nominee, which I would concur with. But I think that a very eloquent opinion on this came to us in an email from Justin. And Justin said, up until I watched the Joe Rogan podcast with Tulsi Gabbard, I, just like yourselves, applauded her statements regarding the military-industrial complex and foreign intervention, especially on the desolate wasteland of principles that is the Democratic Party. It's a much-needed breath of fresh air. However, the hypocritical, is that the right way to say it?
Hypercritical?
I would have said hypercritical.
Yeah.
I don't know. Pivot she performs is asinine. In the same breath, she rightfully condemns American imperialism and foreign intervention, and then immediately moves to say that the money that is spent on war and imperialism should be instead spent on education and healthcare and welfare. Either way you slice it, she's advocating for government intervention, just not when it comes to foreign territories. She wants to directly control the lives of Americans through government force. At this juncture, there is zero part of me that can take her seriously when she advocates for non-intervention and intervention in the same breath. I know you two get that. I just felt important to add it as an addendum on your principled assessment of her inclusion in the debates.
Yeah.
And so I watched the Tulsi Gabbard on Joe Rogan one, the latest. I like her for all the reasons that we've just expressed, the same reasons as that Ron Paul expressed. But I was highly underimpressed of her. Besides talking about foreign imperialism, she even tried to go around the question about should Assange be pardoned and so forth, only because Joe Rogan
pushed her.
Is a good interviewer.
Yeah.
And she trusts Joe and didn't recoil, but she had to be she had to be encouraged to answer, and she didn't even answer with much enthusiasm.
No, and I thought the same thing. That she fell apart to me during that interview, really, really hard, man. And
on top of the fact that she wants welfare and all this kind of stuff, and then she goes on and on about how she's a servant leader. Servant leaders are great, but she went on and on about it way too much. If there's not something genuine there's some part of you that wants to be present because, I don't know, it's cool or something. But she made this overemphasis to be like, it's all about the people and how she worked for the previous congressman for 2 years beforehand. Yeah. She doesn't mention that, as if she's like this complete outsider, doesn't know how anything works and so forth.
She's not.
There's a little bit of something that's not real. And I liked her because she seemed real. So
yeah, her authenticity
took a big hit
for me. Real big hit. There's something to be said about, people who are genuinely in it because they feel like they're going to make or at least give people a voice in government and stand up for their principles and things. But that's not what I got out of that at all.
Maybe it was just the mix of her being so like timid and trying to emphasize so much and steer the conversation to, I'm just doing it for all the people. But like I could tell that she was trying to.
That's what long form will do. It exposes.
And there were multiple opportunities, not that it would be as automatic for her, to acknowledge the history of, well, you're talking about the same things that Obama did, which she wouldn't take. She's running for the Democratic primary. I understand to some degree, but I don't like it.
No, I don't think. I mean, I'll give her a lot of credit for sitting down with Joe Rogan and that long of a format to just take and expose her ideas to the public. I mean, that is commendable in itself. But outside of that, I think she probably did herself more damage than good. I think that there was a lot of people who were looking at Tulsi going, yeah, you know what, this could be the Democratic nominee if she does it right, and that may have been the.
Well, she's trying to win a Democratic primary, though. She probably still did good.
Yeah, she may have. I don't know.
Within the Democratic primary side.
I'll tell you what, though, I'm not a fan. Not in the least now.
I
will commend her.
I can only appreciate the fact that there will be an anti-war voice on the debate stage.
Hopefully.
Well, she reached a threshold of 65,000 donors.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is I question somewhat when she's taking the votes to fund the military-industrial complex, if she's going to be that person that is on stage. And she says she's crowdfunded and all that fun stuff. So I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
I hope so.
So the comment about the vote she's taken, she's probably been the best of the Congress people to congressmen, women,
whatever.
On her votes, but she still has taken a few votes that are not in line with actually being against interventionism,
anti-war,
which is sad too.
Great show, buddy.
Yeah, not exactly what I expected.
You ready to wrap it up?
We could. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Let's totally wrap it up. If you derive any value from the show and you want to help us, there are multiple ways. Share us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. That is probably actually the best way to introduce us to your friends and family.
Yeah.
Besides sending them a text, which I've done to some of my friends to force them to listen. You can become a patron of the show. In August, we'll probably have a new batch of stickers coming out. If you have sticker ideas, info@rebellionpod.com. To become a patron, you go to patreon.com/rebellionpod. Man, I messed that one up. And we'd love some 5-star reviews as well. We've gotten 2. That was great. But it's still pretty dry out here in review land.
We need your help. Get out there, leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening to. And we can't thank all of you enough for putting us where you have already within this very short time span, which is less than a year, Banks. And so I am grateful for every one of you. I know I speak for Banks when I say that, but we can't thank you guys enough. We love you. We need you. Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.